Okay, surely? Yeah, surely! Times 2? A times 2, surely? Give me the combo. Oh, are you serious? No, we can't be serious on that one. Yes, yes! There we go. That's what we need out of this ship. Okay, we're gaming. Hey guys, welcome back to World of Warships. Today we're taking a look at Roussillon yet again. I want to answer a simple question. Is this ship worth getting out of the dockyard? I hope you're having some good progress towards this ship already. Once you get to the end though, is it worth spending the 6,000 doubloons on those final 2 stages? Very simply, yes. Okay, it's a little more nuanced than that, of course, but for 6,000 doubloons, you are getting one of the better tier 9 battleships in the game. I think it's got a pretty fun playstyle surrounding its very strong engine boost and speed maneuverability, allowing you to get around the map rather quickly. You're mostly going to find a lot of broadsides thanks to that speed flexibility. Decent concealment here alongside battle cruiser dispersion on these 406s. And of course, you get a nice reload booster. 50% reduction in your reload rate for 20 seconds. It's a pretty fun ship at tier 9, although unfortunately, it's got a little problem with consistency. Of course, reload boosters can make up for that, but if you only get one chance, 1.7 sigma, that is the tendency for the shells to go towards the center of your dispersion ellipse, it can troll you from time to time, okay? I think this is a great ship. However, it's also a very frustrating ship. I've played it a bunch more, and I got very frustrated with it, even after having some absolutely incredible games with it. Our final match is going to have 15 Citadels, and I was a little frustrated with it after that, okay? So that requires some explanation, right? I want to like this ship a lot, and I do. It's just when it trolls me, I know it can be better. I know it can behave better than it is in some of those scenarios, and I get a little frustrated at that trolling that the dispersion can do. We should also mention that this is essentially champagne guns that just missed that Iparanga entirely. Champagne, of course, at tier 8 gets some very nice dispersion characteristics. That one's Battlecruiser 2.0 Sigma, but only 6 guns there. Very great AP shell pen as well at longer ranges. Shell velocity make it easier to lead your targets too. Roussillon was going to be the up-tiered tier 9, but you get an extra turret on Champagne. I was very excited to check that out. I suppose it makes sense, though, that we can't have essentially tier 10 power level, because I think that's probably what it would be if it did that every single salvo. I want it to do that every single salvo. Part of me really wishes they just put this thing up at tier 10 and given it that 1.9 or 2.0 Sigma. I would have absolutely loved it, since tier 9s, let's be honest, are often getting into that tier 10 matchmaker. But for 6,000 doubloons, this package is very interesting. You really can't get your hands on Jean Bart very easily anymore outside of Black Friday. And here's a very disappointing salvo, of course. But we did get that Edinburgh Dev Strike, so maybe I shouldn't be too critical in this moment. We also have Bourgogne as an example of reload boosting battleships. And Roussillon is a much more attainable ship right now, if, of course, you're not getting your hands on steel. Having these 406s also gives us a little bit more overmatch than something like Bourgogne would have. The HE here is still worth using as well. You get like nearly 50% fire chance on these HE shells. Decent alpha damage at 6,100 as well. Although thanks to the longer reload, you're not as good at lighting fires as consistently, I think, compared to something like Bourgogne, for example. I am mostly using armor piercing out of this ship. Out to 20 kilometers, notice it's like a 10-second flight time. That is extremely easy to use. It's so nice to have that extra shell velocity. Makes it a lot easier to land your salvos on ships that are maneuvering. Let's be honest, the game is played pretty far back these days, so Roussillon fitting that matchmaker is extremely valuable. It suffers at close range thanks to overmatchable bow and stern. It's not a full 32 millimeters there. it allows a lot of battleships to get very consistent damage if you fully bow in. That's why you're going to notice when we get into these closer range scenarios, I'm often showing more broadside than you would normally consider. What I want to do is bait the enemies into shooting at my broadside belt armor and then angling as that shell comes in. So transitioning over to the Champagne is relatively easy thanks to the turret traverse here being not too bad at 30 seconds. A lot of the older battleships have upwards of 40 to 45 second turret traverse, so very, very convenient there. This ship also has relatively good firing angles, especially in a kited position, which is normally where you're going to be in a ship like this one. 30-degree kiting angles is very, very nice. Surprisingly tanky, considering that would be its weakness. It has one less heal base than normal as well, so combining that with our lack of armor would lead you to believe it's not very survivable. Yet, I found myself having some pretty solid tanking games as long as I stayed moving. We're about to make a drastic mistake here towards the end of this battle. Not only catching Minnesota and not exactly getting the damaging salvos I was hoping for, but we're going to position bow in, and I'm going to stop moving here. I have no good reason as to why I did this. I think my brain just shut off. I really should have just continued on at full speed here, waited until the Minnesota shot, because Ipiranga has been spamming HE, and then turned away to kite towards where our Cambridge is, for example. I think then this would have worked out a lot better. It's still a reasonably tanky ship, though, as long as they're not guaranteeing hits into that superstructure that's angled or into that bow. It's not going to tank like a Valparaiso, of course, but in crucial moments, you can push up. Not like this, but you can push up. Of course, speed juking is also an option, thanks to the improved acceleration you get with your engine boost up, and even without it, taking prop mod can do a pretty good job. So for 6,000 doubloons, pretty easy pickup in my opinion, especially if you have those doubloons on your account. You just got to know that you're going to get trolled from time to time, like this Minnesota going broadside onto us at 13.5 kilometers. I'll try not to harp on that too much, but that is my main problem with it, okay? Is that it can do good damage, and then it doesn't give us citadels there. If you're going to spend a lot extra to grind out or not grind out this entire dockyard, maybe you have 10 phases left, something like that, well, then you're spending 30,000 doubloons, and I don't think it would be worth that personally. Dockyards are at their best value when you are grinding out the entire event and then you buy those final few phases. If you have to spend anything more than 15 to 20k doubloons, I mean, that's the price of a lot of normal tier 9 ships, and while this is a very good tier 9 ship, Tier 9 Matchmaker hurts these days, and it is not the level Wisconsin is at its tier, for example. Another dockyard ship that I think a lot of people would like to go get. Roussillon is not another Wisconsin, okay? It's not that level of power. However, I do think it is a lot better than the vast majority of dockyard ships that are, let's be honest, a little bit mediocre to not great at their tier. While I do get a little frustrated at the inconsistency personally, I find the ship has enough downsides to maybe merit having a little bit more consistent Sigma than it has right now, considering it has a 36-second base reload on 9 406s, as well as this reload booster consumable having a 160-second cooldown. Champagne's reload booster has a 60-second cooldown. It's 100 seconds more than double. Bourgogne, for example, also gets a much better reload on its reload booster at 120 seconds. It's actually quite difficult to get through your reload boosters here. It feels much more punishing to use them in the wrong situation. However, you do get one more of these reload boosters compared to Champagne. Same number as Bourgogne. Unfortunate miss on that Minotaur. Fortunately, he'll give us a second chance. And, well, we get him this time, fortunately. I gotta say, some of those salvos where we get that opportunity on the Minotaur, most players aren't going to give you a second chance like that in a battle, so it's pretty disappointing when those ones miss. That's where I want the little bit improved Sigma parameters. Broadside Montana at 5 kilometers, and we cannot Citadel him, unfortunately. That is a waterline Citadel, of course, but I won't lie, battlecruiser dispersion, high pen values here. I was hoping for a little bit more. Trying to aim for the rear of his ship, but he's so angled that we are bouncing at this point. Using our reload booster, though, helps us a lot to gain DPM here and make up for some of those missed salvos, whether it be my aim or whether it be trolley dispersion. Montana trying to go broadside enough again to get his front turrets, And this time we got them. Okay, we got the Citadels. Now for Musashi, and I really need you to consider that this is a broadside Musashi at 5 kilometers. We have battle cruiser dispersion here, and only our front guns. So 6 guns going into this guy. One of the most exposed Citadels in the entire game. How much damage do you expect here? I would expect 3 Citadels, probably. Half getting Citadels, and we get 4. Yes, we get 4. Musashi overmatches us, so we're gonna go down here. But it's still a pretty good game. We get up to 11 Citadels. But that's not the most that I had entirely. It's really important you remember that Musashi salvo for this game later on. Little spoiler there, but remember that one, okay? It's going to come back to bite us, I guess. Yumahari at 20 kilometers. He goes broadside. And our pen is so good at these longer ranges that it's quite easy to get through some of the more lightly armored battleship Citadels. Certainly through cruisers and battle cruisers. But over 500 millimeters of pen at this range with the AP is very, very comfortable alongside that shell velocity. If you're someone who doesn't enjoy the American battleships like North Carolina, for example, and its incredibly slow shells, especially since a lot of the game these days is played so far back. Back turret, best turret, proving itself once again. Double sit there out of that one. Like I said, it can do some absolutely disgusting damage. It just doesn't do it all the time. And maybe that's why I get a little bit annoyed at it. I know what this ship is capable of, and I like what it can do. I love this playstyle of these French battleships where they're fast, where they can find these broadsides, these weak points in the enemy line. Notice where I'm positioned here, we have opportunities to find broadsides from either side. The central battleship positioning works pretty well a lot of the time, and we have the opportunity to push into this cap when the time is right. I really like having that as an option. The good concealment here also allows us to play some of these more bow-on positions. We can get out of these positions if we get into some trouble. We can reverse behind the island. We're fast enough to do that with our engine boost. Broadside Yumahari takes a sit. Love to see it. Broadside Wukong, back turret, and look at the dispersion there. Isn't that a thing of beauty? Broadside ship takes a Citadel. That's what we need to see out of this ship. We have weaker armor than basically all of the tier 9 battleships. We also have a pretty long reload, 36 seconds there for those 9 406s as far as tier 9 battleships go. We also, unfortunately, have reduced AP alpha damage relative to a lot of 406s. Like Iowa's going to have 13,500 alpha, somewhere in there. And we have 12,100 alpha damage. Both 406s, but we're missing out on quite a bit of extra damage there. So I'm expecting it to be more consistent. And maybe that is my own problem, my expectations. But when you get into late game scenarios where you know your ship can perform well, you manage to find that broadside Valparaiso finally, and you need to finish him off, otherwise he's going to heal back to full HP, and your ship doesn't give you the Citadels. You can see how it'd be a little frustrating. We get a brief glimpse at a Marceau here. I was hoping to finish him off, but didn't have enough time to aim. Bit of a snapshot, so we don't quite get there. Broadside Svea now at 5 kilometers. If we're going to have a chance at this game, we need some serious consistency out of our ship. And I think this is part of my issue, is that I get a little attached to some of these games. I know what my ship is capable of. I'm putting myself into positions to find these broadsides. I think that's a lot of the skill of battleships, is positioning. You can't really control your dispersion. Unfortunately, even 2 salvos isn't enough to finish off this Svea at 5 kilometers. But when we are positioning well, we're catching so many broadsides that eventually we should be getting some damage. But in these late game clutch scenarios, we need that consistency. And it's a little bit unfortunate that Roussillon doesn't quite have that. Perhaps, though, if it did, it would be pushed up into that tier 10 power level. And of course, this is still a tier 9. Oh, there we go. Just to make sure everyone's frustrated, the broadside Svea survived, and when he's angled in smoke, we overmatched Citadel. Making sure everybody's frustrated. Good stuff. Anyways, onwards to a big mistake here at the end. I should have saved this salvo because we're not going to reload in time. There was no point in doing that. It gave away my position. And this is my big mistake going into this brawl. However, look at how broadside these guys are. We know what this ship is capable of. You've seen it. Back turret, You've let me down. Oh no. And our reload booster is still on cooldown. Bourgogne probably would have had it up by now. Certainly Champagne would have. Yamato gets 11k into us. Notice I'm not going bow in. If I go bow in, he's probably going to aim a little higher or into our sections that he overmatches quite easily. Broadside Yamato, front turrets, 2 Citadels this time only. A little disappointed. Okay, back turrets. Can you save me? No, it's only 1 Citadel. It's still good damage, okay? It's still good damage. But remember the Musashi stuff? We know what this ship is capable of. And I won't lie, I was pretty invested here. We have a Cyclone. We have an opportunity to isolate some fights. We catch the broadsides. And unfortunately, it takes me 3 whole salvos of time to actually finish off the broadside Yamato. That felt disappointing to me in the moment, okay? It's still a good ship. It's a tier 9 ship that performs pretty well. It's a ship that fits the meta quite well. Able to snipe at longer ranges. It's fast enough to capitalize on flanks if you're interested in that. It can even push in and find these broadsides and not brawl, but capitalize on ships making mistakes at closer ranges. However, 1.7 Sigma I find to be a little bit annoying. And maybe it annoys me so much because I actually really like everything else about this ship, and I get a little attached to wanting this ship to play well and knowing it can do well, and then it just lets me down every once in a while. You should probably know I'm also a pretty big fan of Bourgogne. If you didn't know that, I am. I do still very much enjoy that ship. So I'm predisposed to liking this one. Similar hull, same engine boost and maneuverability. Although, of course, we do lack some HP and survivability thanks to the armor changes. The dispersion is good, usually. I think the way I can describe it best is when it hits, this ship is absolutely amazing. When it hits, though, which it mostly will. Mostly, it will hit. Here's the build that I was running. I actually was giving up fire prevention towards the end for Furious. And considering the playstyle of this ship, the concealment, where you want to position it, you shouldn't be brawling, okay? We're trying to capitalize on flanks when we are pushing in, or it's, you know, the end of the game. We got to try and make something work. But for the most part, you should not be getting into situations where fire prevention is the difference between you surviving and not. I guess is the best way I can put it. So that's how I have kind of given up fire prevention on this one, which is not what most of you should do, okay? I guess it adds a lot of difficulty to the playstyle that is already not the easiest thanks to this 25mm bow and stern section here. 32mm here is overmatchable by those Yamatos and Musashis, but even if they don't overmatch that, if you go directly bow into angle, like you might in a lot of other battleships to 406s, for example, you're just going to get overmatched through this. And in fact, even Citadel potentially through that, because it is, you know, a little above waterline, this Citadel. It's protected by some turtleback and kind of the French black hole armor. You see how much space there is. It's kind of that French characteristics of shells just disappear into the armor belt. However, bow on like this, no, which is why you saw me so broadside, maybe too broadside, you would think. You kind of have to do that in this one to survive at some of those medium and closer ranges. It can work, but it's a little bit more risky. Even with reload mod here, it's like a 32-second reload, which feels quite slow. And I didn't mention this yet, but even though the main battery reload booster is the same as Bourgogne with a much longer cooldown, unfortunately, it feels less impactful. The reason Bourgogne's feels more impactful is that its base reload is so much better. Bourgogne fires, you hit your reload booster, halfway through this booster, you get another salvo, and then just as your reload booster is running out, you're pretty much at your 3rd salvo. So it feels like you get 3 salvos very quickly in a reload boost usage. Here, however, we fire, we click our reload booster, and then around the 12 to 15 second mark, we're getting our next salvo, and that remaining last salvo that Bourgogne might get at the very end, we're only halfway towards that reload, which then once this booster runs out, we still have like 15 seconds to wait. So it's cutting the 3rd salvo instead of having a 31-second reload down to maybe 20 to 25-second reload on that 3rd one, which is less impactful feeling. That's just vibes based. Okay, I didn't do the math here. This is just something that I did want to mention just on the feeling of this reload booster. It doesn't have the same feeling, unfortunately. And the speed here is 33.6 knots. Alongside running our engine boost, we're pretty quick. You may consider even running brisk, and probably is good to run brisk. I wanted that reload booster back though, which is why I'm taking this upgrade. This gives us 40% consumable prep time, and that's really important for such a long cooldown on that reload booster, unfortunately. But brisk is also very good here. Turret traverse is fast, so I didn't feel the need so much for grease the gears, and the extra alpha damage is nice out of super heavy AP, because again, we're not in positions where we should be surviving or dying based off of taking or not taking these upgrades. I think if you're taking these upgrades and they're the reason you're not surviving, like you would take fire prevention and basic survivability, if these would keep you alive, that's probably a very small sliver of scenarios that you probably shouldn't have positioned yourself in that way anyway. I'm mostly talking to myself because I often get myself into those positions. As for the rest of the upgrades, steering gears and prop mod are probably your best options. Maneuverability is kind of king here, alongside that engine boost. Notably, even with taking this upgrade here, emergency repair expert, we only get 4 heals. So we don't have that 5th heal, lacking a little bit in that survivability. We do get a spotter plane, which is pretty nice. 23.4 kilometers is actually less than Champagne, which has 25 kilometers of range. It's so weird to me. Okay, just let me complain a little bit more. The tier 8 ship gets 6 guns with a much faster reload. Notice no reload mod at tier 8, and it's still a 28.6 second reload. Battle cruiser dispersion, same shells, but 2.0 Sigma. Okay, so going up to tier 9, we gain a turret, but we're losing 8 seconds of base reload, which we think we can then take reload mod. And we're also going to lose out on 0.3 Sigma to gain that extra turret. Feels a little bad, man. It feels like, and given my experience of playing this ship and feeling a little bit trolled from time to time on dispersion, I wish it kept even 1.9 Sigma. Maybe not 2.0 Sigma, 1.9, 1.8 even. I would love just a little bit of extra consistency out of it. It also, again, has that unfortunate cooldown time. I actually played a Champagne game or two, and I was shocked at how fast the reload booster came up on Champagne, where here, because that one's 60 seconds. It's 60 seconds, guys. Look at that. You get one less, though. But 52.7 with the build. Feels bad, 140 seconds. Anyways, I'm starting to ramble at this point. Roussillon is definitely worth getting, though, if you're only buying those last 2 phases. Pretty easy recommend. You're not Wisconsin level, certainly, but it's definitely better than the average Dockyard ship. This is among the better Dockyard ships that we have seen. So definitely recommended if you have managed to grind through all of those phases. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Thank you very much for watching, and have a great rest of your day.